This presentation is intended for educational purposes only. It should not be interpreted as medical advice or used as a substitute for individualized care from a qualified healthcare professional. Before we talk about what to eat, we need to answer a more important question. What exactly are we eating? Because what if the biggest problem in nutrition today isn't carbs or fat or calories, but something most people have never even heard of: ultra-processed food. To understand ultra-processed food, I want to give you a tool you can use for the rest of your life. It's called the NOVA classification system. Think of it as a scale from 1 to 4, based on how much a food has been changed from its original form. Group 1. These are unprocessed or minimally processed foods: fruits, vegetables, eggs, meat, fish. One ingredient comes from nature. Group 2. Slightly processed but still real food. Things like roasted nuts or canned beans. Maybe a little salt, maybe heat, but still recognizable. Group 3. Processed foods. Bread, cheese, canned stew. These have multiple ingredients, but they're ingredients you recognize and could use at home. And then we get to Group 4, ultra-processed foods. These are not really food in the traditional sense. They are industrial formulations, made in factories, not kitchens. They often have 5, 10, even 20 ingredients, including things no home cook would ever use. If the ingredient list reads like a chemistry textbook, that's your signal. You're looking at ultra-processed food. This includes things like packaged snacks, sugary cereals, frozen meals, sodas, protein bars, flavored yogurts. And here's the part most people don't realize. This isn't occasional. More than half of what Americans eat every single day, about 58%, is ultra-processed food. Not once in a while, not just fast food, every day. If you walk into a grocery store, about 7 out of 10 products on the shelves fall into this category. Now you might be thinking, okay, but does that actually matter? This is where the science gets very serious. In 2024, researchers published one of the most comprehensive nutrition analyses ever conducted in the BMJ, one of the most respected medical journals in the world. This wasn't a small study. It was an umbrella review, meaning it combined data from multiple large studies covering nearly 10 million people worldwide. And what they found was striking. Ultra-processed food was linked to harm in 32 out of 45 health outcomes studied. Let me say that again. The majority of diseases they looked at showed a connection. And another major journal, The Lancet, went even further. They called ultra-processed food a key driver of chronic disease globally. So now we know two things: what ultra-processed food is and how much of it we're eating. The real question is, what is it actually doing inside our bodies? Now, this is where the science becomes very clear, and honestly, a little unsettling. In 2024, researchers published one of the most comprehensive nutrition analyses ever conducted in the BMJ. And what they found was a consistent pattern of harm. Now, some of these risks you might expect. Things like heart disease, diabetes. We've heard that before. But here's what they actually found: a 50% increase in cardiovascular death, a 12% increase in type 2 diabetes. But here's the part that should make all of us pause: a 48 to 53% increase in anxiety and mental health disorders. Not just physical disease, mental health, mood, anxiety, how we feel day to day. Most people don't connect food with their mental health, but this data suggests we should. And overall, a 21% increase in all-cause mortality. And here's the key point: This is dose dependent.
The more ultra-processed food, the higher the risk. And this is not just about calories. These risks are independent of calorie intake. It's not just overeating. The food itself is affecting the body, and apparently, even the mind.
So now we know what ultra-processed food is and how much of it we're eating. The real question is, what is it actually doing inside our bodies? Because if this were just about calories, this wouldn't be nearly as concerning. But it's not. Ultra-processed food changes how your body regulates hunger, how your gut functions, how your brain responds to food, and even how your cells age. Let me walk you through what's happening. Let's start with something simple. Imagine a whole almond. It has fat, protein, fiber, and micronutrients all locked inside a natural structure, what we call a food matrix. When you eat that almond, your body has to work to break it down. That process takes time. And during that time, your gut releases hormones that tell your brain, we're full, you can stop eating. Now compare that to almond-flavored crackers. The structure is gone.
The nutrients have been broken apart, recombined, and turned into something your body absorbs almost instantly. There's no slowdown, no natural braking system. So what happens? You eat more without even realizing it. In a controlled study from the NIH, people eating ultra-processed diets consumed about 500 extra calories per day without trying and without feeling fuller. That's not a willpower issue. That's biology being bypassed. Now let's go deeper. Inside your gut, you have about 38 trillion bacteria. They regulate your immune system, your metabolism, even your mood. In many ways, they function like a second brain. Ultra-processed foods damage this system in two major ways. First, emulsifiers. These are chemicals added to foods like ice cream and salad dressings to keep oil and water mixed. But in your gut, they thin the protective lining of your intestines. Think of that lining like a barrier. When it breaks down, bacteria and toxins leak into your bloodstream. Your immune system reacts and triggers inflammation. Not once, but every time you eat it. Second, lack of fiber. Your good gut bacteria survive by feeding on fiber. Ultra-processed foods have almost none, so those beneficial bacteria decline and harmful ones take over. The result? Chronic low-grade inflammation. And that's a root cause of heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, and even cancer.
Now let's talk about something most people never think about. What happens to food during industrial processing? When food is exposed to high temperatures, frying, extrusion, spray drying, new chemical compounds are created, compounds that were not in the original food. For example, acrylamide, a probable carcinogen, advanced glycation end products, which accelerate aging, DNA-damaging compounds formed during high heat. These are measurable substances with known biological effects. This isn't theoretical. This is chemistry inside your food. Now we get to one of the most powerful mechanisms, your brain. Ultra-processed foods are engineered to hit the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt. When you eat them, your blood sugar rises quickly. That triggers a surge of dopamine, the same reward chemical activated by nicotine and other addictive substances.
Over time, your brain adapts. You need more to feel the same level of reward. At the same time, your baseline satisfaction drops, which means more cravings, more snacking, and less control. This is not a lack of discipline. This is biological conditioning. And here's something even more hidden: the packaging. Many ultra-processed foods come in materials that leach chemicals into the food. For example, BPA, which disrupts hormones, phthalates, linked to thyroid and developmental issues, microplastics, now found in human blood and organs. So even before your body processes the food itself, you're being exposed to additional chemical stress. Finally, the most invisible mechanism. What ultra-processed food replaces? When more than half your calories come from these foods, something else is missing. Magnesium, potassium, B vitamins, fiber, antioxidants. Over time, your body becomes undernourished. You're getting enough calories, often too many, but not enough nutrients. This is sometimes called hidden hunger. Now here's the key insight. These mechanisms don't happen in isolation. They stack. Food structure breaks down, absorption speeds up, hunger signals fail, gut bacteria shift, inflammation rises, nutrients decline, and over time, that leads to chronic disease.
So if ultra-processed food is driving this entire cascade, the obvious question is, what can we actually do about it in real life? And I want to clarify something before we go further. This is not about deeply analyzing food labels. Some of you already do that, and that's a great skill. This is much simpler. This is about quickly spotting whether a food is ultra-processed or not. Think of this as a filter, not an analysis. So I'm going to show you a way to do that in about 30 seconds. Not to be perfect, but to answer one question. Is this real food or ultra-processed? First, ignore the front of the package. That's marketing. Second, look at the ingredient list. Not to study it in detail, but just to get a quick sense. Is this a short list of real foods or a long list of industrial ingredients? Third, scan, don't analyze. If you see things like carrageenan, maltodextrin, TBHQ,
that's your signal. This is ultra-processed. Fourth, and this is optional, glance at a few key numbers. Sodium under 600 milligrams, fiber at least 5 grams, protein around 15 to 20 grams. Now, just to be clear, these are not strict medical cutoffs. They're quick guidelines to help you make a better decision in real time. Some of them come from nutrition standards, like sodium. Others, like fiber and protein, are practical targets that help you choose more filling, less processed foods. So again, this isn't about precision. It's about quickly recognizing, am I moving toward real food or ultra-processed food? But remember, this is not about optimizing every number. It's about quickly answering one question, is this real food or ultra-processed? Because once you can quickly recognize ultra-processed food, you don't need to overthink every decision. You just make better ones, faster. And we all make the best choices we can based on time, budget, and what's available. This isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about doing a little better, over time.
Now let's make this even simpler. You don't need a complete diet overhaul. You need a system. Step 1, assess. For just 3 days, pay attention to what you're eating. Scan labels. Notice patterns. Most people discover they're eating far more ultra-processed food than they realized. Step 2, swap. Not everything, just one thing per week. Cereal becomes oatmeal. Deli meat becomes real chicken. Sugary yogurt becomes plain yogurt with fruit. Small changes, repeated consistently, create massive results over time. Here's the key insight. You don't need to eliminate ultra-processed food completely. Research shows that reducing it from about 50% of your diet to around 15% is associated with better weight, better physical function, and even slower aging. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. I want to leave you with a simple story. Thousands of years ago, there's a record of a very basic experiment. A group of people chose to eat simple, natural foods, while others continued their usual diet. After a short period of time, the difference was visible. The group eating real food looked healthier. And I want to connect this to something deeper. God created us. He designed our bodies, every system, every function. And He also provided the food that best supports those bodies. That guidance has been there, preserved in Scripture. But over time, we've drifted away from simplicity. We've replaced what is natural with what is manufactured. So this isn't about guilt. It's about returning. Returning to what is simple, what is real, what was provided from the beginning. If you remember nothing else from today,
foods that look like they came from nature are usually the better choice. The one who created you knows what your body needs.